One of the biggest frustrations for a new bow hunter or a new archer is how to accurately judge how far away that deer or that target is from you. Now, you can always just go buy a rangefinder, which I recommend that everybody does. However, I guarantee it, there will come a time where you either forget it, the batteries are dead, or whatever. Plus, if you do any kind of competitive shooting, you most likely won't be allowed to use it. Even if you do have your rangefinder with you while you're hunting, there could be a time where you just can't range that deer or whatever it is you're shooting at, and you'll wish you had some more confidence in your guesses. So in this video, we're going to go over 4 tips to help you get better at accurately judging target distance. But before we get into the tips, do me a favor, and if this is your first time on my channel and you like what you see, hit that subscribe button and make sure you hit that bell icon so you can be notified every time I upload a video. And the first tip to getting better at accurately judging target distance is to develop your recoil judging skills. Recoil judging is simply ingraining in your mind what certain distances look like. If you have a rangefinder, the easiest thing you can do is look at an object and try to guess how far away it is. Then use your rangefinder and see how close you were. If you don't have a rangefinder, what you can do is join some 3D tournaments where there are some known ranges. This should give you plenty of practice at knowing what an actual deer looks like at 20 yards, at 30 yards, or they even do odd numbers, 35, 33, something like that. Your depth perception plays a big role in accurately judging distance, and if you don't train your eyes, your brain will play tricks on you. It also doesn't help that we don't measure things in yards here in the US because, America. If you get pretty good at this, you can develop a gut feeling about how far away a target or a deer is because you've seen it time and time again. And usually your gut feeling is right, so trust it. And the second tip to accurately judging distance is my personal favorite, and that is ground judging. What I typically do is I try to guess how many long steps it would take for me to get to a target or a deer or whatever it is I'm trying to guess the range of. I've measured my, a long lunging step, and it's about a yard. So visualizing me taking these steps helps me get a pretty good guess of how far away it is. Another way to use ground judging is to find a distance that you're most confident at guessing. For whatever reason, it tends to be around 20 yards for most people, but it can be just about anything you can consistently, accurately identify. Once you get good at that, you can break up any distance in those increments until you reach that target. So if your most confident distance is 20 yards and it takes, you think you can fit 2.5 of those in between you and that deer or target, it's about 50 yards away. You can also practice ground judging by setting up a series of cones or arrows or whatever in your backyard. You'll also be able to see that how distances look different the farther away they get from you. So 10 yards close up looks a lot different than 10 yards that's far away from you. And the good thing about practicing your ground judging is that it's also developing your recoil judging skills. So you kind of kill 2 birds with 1 stone. And the third trick to accurately judging distance is to use the halfway point. Sometimes it can just be easier to judge a shorter distance. It's why ground judging works so well. But the difference between ground judging and the halfway point is instead of counting increments or trying to imagine yourself taking steps to get to that target, you find something that is about halfway there and judging that, and then just double it. This trick also requires a lot of practice and trial and error, but it can be one of the quicker ways to accurately judge distance because you're only looking at 1 point and then just doubling that. It can be a lot quicker than trying to count how many steps it takes to get there. This technique requires that you use the other tips to get better at judging distances overall. It's just that it's a quicker way to get to that final guess. And the fourth trick to more accurately judging distance is to do what's called pin gapping. Pin gapping is where you use the distance between your pins to get a more accurate estimate of how far away that target is. It's kind of like a makeshift rangefinder. What you're basically doing is you are bracketing that deer or that target in between your pins. This requires a lot of practice and a lot of trial and error, a lot of experimentation. And if you haven't picked up on it yet, all of these tips require practice. So let's say that you are aiming at a deer and you place your 30-yard pin along that deer's back. This makes your 40-yard pin hit at that deer's belly. So using this information, you can tell that that deer is about 50 yards away. Again, it requires a lot of practice and a lot of trial and error. Not everybody's bow is going to shoot the same, so your numbers are going to be different. It also requires that you know your bow very well and that all your pins are accurately sighted in. Now, just a word of caution, I've heard that pin gapping is illegal at most 3D competitions, so don't go around bragging about using it. Of course, I don't know how they can tell that you're using that technique anyway, but Just a word of caution. So that was 4 tricks to getting better at accurately judging distance. Now, none of these are going to replace having a rangefinder. I definitely recommend that you pick one up. There are great options at great prices. But I do think it's important that everybody at least develops these skills a little bit so they're not completely relying on the rangefinder. And if you have any more tips or tricks that you use to help you accurately judge distance, leave those down in the comments below. Hit that like button if you like this video, share it if you found it helpful, and make sure that you are subscribed so you can stay informed.